I like strong stuff. I like how I asked you, would you like a Coke? And you said absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I would not disrespect this kind of amazing drink with Coke.
This was one of my pop's favorite ones, although Woodford is actually the main one. As we can see, it's right there in that corner
Yeah.
right there. Always,
Just
in case we
chilling.
need a refill, we'll go for it, right?
Yeah, it's watching us.
But dude, what a crazy day, huh?
Oh my gosh.
Kamala, I guess, and Democrats threw the towel on trying to get independence in the center.
Which is what even Vivek's statement kind of alluded to.
Yeah. Dude, that statement that he made was incredible, honestly.
Yeah.
It really put things into a perfect perspective, because if Republicans are going to try and play the same game, the game that hasn't worked the last few weeks against Kamala, and they're going to try and play that against Tim Walz now, it's not going to be effective. Although, like, this research and everything that we've done is just incredible on what an individual Tim Walz is. And I'm just scratching my head. Why did they pick him? But it's a gift.
I don't know, and I didn't know anything about the guy. And what we've researched, like, if we could find this in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever, what else do they know about this guy? I mean,
It's probably long. I can't imagine the vetting process.
it's probably not very deep in the Democratic Party right now because they probably want that. Mm-hmm. So I was researching. I don't know if you saw this, but what was it? James Lindsay posted something about Tim Walz.
James Lindsay's always cooking something good up, so...
Yeah, we got to get him on.
I have to say, though, Tim Walz has been calling Republicans weird. I have to say, Tim Walz himself is actually really weird. And a lot of stuff that you told me while you were researching this was making me think, like, wow, this guy isn't normal. He's actually weird. I would go as far as just calling him a radical. He's
definitely trained by the Chinese, owned by the Chinese, funded by the Chinese. This is crazy. So now... James is calling him Tiananmen Tim doing the China waltz.
Hey, what?
So check this out. Vice President pick Tim Walz traveled to communist China every year from 96 until at least 2003 after receiving special work visas from the Chinese government, and later honeymooned in China, continuing his infatuation with the communist dictatorship.
Wait, who the hell goes on a honeymoon to China?
Not only that, check this out. He went on a honeymoon on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Wait. Say that again.
Okay, he went with his wife on his honeymoon. It's a picture of him here. It says Chadron grad gets the royal treatment. And yeah, he literally said that they asked him, why did you go on honeymoon on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square? And he's like, because it's a date I won't forget.
Wow. So he's a full blown like what would you call him?
I mean, that's the equivalent of some guy having a honeymoon on the anniversary of like George Floyd's death. That's the exact same thing.
That's crazy.
This guy is really crazy. So I was checking him out.
He's obsessed with this like Chinese culture, or
Yeah. So it says he went to China straight after college through a program set up by Harvard University and taught in Guangdong province shortly after the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. He would later then honeymoon in China with his wife, Gwen. And here's a weird thing. They brought a group of 60 young people with them to their honeymoon. What?
Wait, why?
I guess to see China? That's weird. In the 1990s, it says a couple set up a business which took high school students to China every summer for around the decade. I'm getting Oprah Winfrey, Oprah Academy vibes. And he has been to China dozens of times, including on trade missions, and has called his experiences amazing.
You get a trip to China. You get a trip to China. Oh, it's my honeymoon. You get a trip to China.
That's crazy.
It almost feels like he wants to people see how amazing the CCP operates there.
Yeah. No, he really does, because so this is the Northwest Nebraska newspaper, and it's him with this big like little fan, like an Asian fan, and he says, Walz, who is from Butte, Nebraska, said, "No matter how long I live, I'll never be treated that well again." He says in 1989, and he's taking a bunch of students from there. Here's the crazy part. So, and he also speaks some Mandarin. He did not accept that China had to be an adversary.
Say that again?
He said that China does not have to be an adversary.
Okay.
Then he's been attacked for wanting to shift more and more American manufacturing jobs to China. But here's a weird thing. I'm going to find this. So as a teacher back in the U.S., he had a Chinese banner in his office. Okay, cool. I get it. He likes the country. But something really weird here. And here it goes. According to the report in the Atlantic Times/Herald, in 93, when students raised money for that summer's trip to the country, Chinese authorities paid a large part of the cost. This is in 93.
Wow.
A Chinese university was he also reportedly told the students to downplay their Americanness on the trip. A Chinese university was reportedly helping with food expenses for rooms and transportation. The following year, 7 students reportedly received $800 in scholarships to help with the costs, and the scholarships were sponsored by him and his wife and the Chinese government.
That's crazy. It makes me think, though, like as the current governor of Minnesota, he has the largest population of Somalians living there. Ilhan Omar, the famous House representative, is obviously from there, right?
Yep.
So who do you think he likes more, Somalia or China?
So, I investigated this. It's called, the organization that sent him there, it's called World Teach. And it was founded in 1986, and it shut down in 2019, I believe. So they're no longer, so I couldn't find really any information. I want to see who the founder was, things about them. It's weird. This is super weird.
It's crazy. I always remember that one video of James Lindsay explaining what is woke, and he essentially made a statement that woke is actually just Marxism, like Chinese Marxism with American characteristics.
Yep.
And when we talk about woke, we obviously talk about very far left, very ultra progressive, in a sense, they're regressive actual policies. And what we saw in Minnesota being implemented, like everything that I researched, is incredibly, it perfectly fits what the far left wants, right? And so it's interesting. He's sympathetic to China. He's like obsessed with China.
Obsessed,
like,
literally
right?
obsessed.
It's safe to say that he embraces in some sort of the idea of Marxism by what he, going to China and bringing people with you and telling them that you need to downplay down your Americanness. That's telling me that you want them to embrace the Chinese culture, which is fine on one aspect, but you're also calling them to embrace Marxism, essentially.
Yep.
So he goes back home, he becomes a politician, and then he becomes the governor of Minnesota and implements some of the most far left policy initiatives we've ever seen across the country. Things like providing sanctuary for LGBTQ kids so they can run away from, like, let's say, Oklahoma, where they can be provided with gender affirming care. And they run to Minnesota, where the governor says, we're going to protect you against Oklahoma as the state and even against your parents, which is just crazy.
I remember hearing about there's a series of parents. Seek Smith connected me with them. I believe they're in Oklahoma, and their child ran away to Minnesota. And it's crazy that you said that, because it was in the news. And they were trying to get him back, and the governor, they were saying, hey, you're taking our child across state lines. Like, that's illegal transportation of a child.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to find this. I had it somewhere here, but I guess I didn't put it on the last minute. But he implemented this bill essentially in 2023. This is what happened with Tim Walz. He was like really moderate when he was just a House representative. But the second that Minnesota became a trifecta, meaning that the state Congress was both the House and the Senate were blue and the governor was blue, he became ultra radical, implementing stuff like this, even signing red flag laws into effect in Minnesota. And he did all of this in 2023. Now, I want you to imagine this. You're a brand new governor in 2020. You get COVID, first of all, and we'll talk about how he mishandled COVID in a second. But then you also get the George Floyd incident happening in your state. It happened in Minneapolis. And now you got insane kind of like protests going on. And you wait 2 years and you start to implement this very far left agenda. It's just, I need a sip for that.
He's a literal politician. He's a literal politician. So it all makes sense, because if your job is to be a spy, you have to be a spy until you have to show yourself, right? If you're like a sleeper cell or something, you're asleep. The Russians, the KGB, they all do this. They get people, they put them in positions of power. They did this in the Russian church, the Russian Orthodox Church, where they'd have clergymen or people that just went to church become people in positions of power, and then they can change the church from the inside out. The same thing with the Methodists and the Episcopalians, where now they've changed their shield on their logo to like a pride flag colors. So we know that they infiltrate stuff. To me, if you're telling me this guy went to China 30 times right after school. And I know what the Chinese were doing. They would even tell people, yeah, come see China. Yeah, this is a little earlier than the 1980s. This is back, when Mao was in power. And he said, come see China. So they would send American journalists there, usually leftist university type. They would go there and they would take them on a guided tour where they wouldn't see anything bad. They would only see the good of China. This is what they do in Cuba right now. If I go to Cuba, I have to go on a guided tour. I can't go off on my own and see Cuba. I see the Cuba that they want to see for me. So they would take these journalists and poets and things like that to China and be like, oh my gosh, what they're building is incredible. America needs to be like this. But it was a facade, it was a show, and they wouldn't see just the destitute and the death and the stuff happening in China. So I feel like this guy got on the same wave, where he was a small kid from Butte, Nebraska, never saw the world, probably grew up in a little neighborhood, went to China, and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, this is so grand, because he never really saw the world, and they were like, hey, this is how we do it. And he was like, I like this.
And that perfectly sums it up, that he was so inspired by what he saw in China that he wants to implement it here in America, which brings me back to what James Lindsay said. That is literally Chinese Marxism, just with American characteristics, scrambled all over on top of it. And it's crazy. It's honestly crazy. And with the policies that he's implemented since he became governor, it's pretty damn evident.
Yeah, these are some crazy policies that you found out. I mean,
and people will say, well, how does these ultra progressive policies, these very far left policies, how does this actually relate to socialism or Marxism actually that we see in China? And Fabian, I think you're one of the best people to actually explain this stuff, because every time you and I have a conversation about how Marxists infiltrate America from the outside, we start to see it majority of the time in very far left policies and movements, right? So let's go down this list real quickly.
This is a crazy list, but I can't believe this list.
I know, when I was putting it together, I was like, holy crap. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here, but let's maybe we'll talk about the fraud investigations, the scandals and stuff like that.
Because really, if I were a business owner and I got this as my resume, there's no way in hell that I would ever hire this guy.
Well, let's just run. The main thing here that I want to point out, in terms of the policy wise, before we get to the scandals, is Walz has creepy far left views. Walz signed legislation to ensure minors from not only his state, but across the country can get sex exchange operations in Minnesota. Walz also signed a bill to require schools to stock period products in boys' bathrooms, right? So this is sort of a policy initiatives we've seen happen in California and whatnot, but Minnesota essentially is the pioneer of such policies.
Whoa. Tim Walz, it says he gives free college tuition to illegal immigrants in Minnesota?
He does.
Dude, what the hell?
Yeah. There's a lot of actual subsidies that we can see happening in Minnesota that are related to that. But there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
so
this guy's weird.
This
guy's weird. He's trying to call...
Right. It's funny. I think it's hilarious that it looks like Kamala picked him because he a week ago called Republicans weird, and that stuck really good for the Kamala campaign, apparently.
Which in and of itself is weird, because I get why they're doing this, and I know we talked about it before. They want to make what is not normal, and will make it and what's normal not normal. So any heteronormativity, just cis white male, is now weird. So they're calling all Republicans weird. And they're trying to convince the people who have mental health problems and who are trans and who are whatever it is that they're normal. So it's an inversion of reality. It's to make you think that you're normal, because remember, they were always the outcast. They're always the weird ones, and telling them, no, you take pride in it, you're normal. It's them that have a problem. This is crazy.
It is. Look, things like this bother me. For example, in his first term as governor, Walz oversaw Minnesota's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Like other Democrat leaders, he favored heavy-handed pandemic restrictions, including lockdown and mask mandates. Whatever. My problem is this. Walz also set up a hotline to report residents who violated COVID-19 mandates. This was reported by Fox 9 in Minnesota, so this isn't some far-right conspiracy or anything like this. Fabian, why would they do this? Why somebody that goes to China is inspired by their surveillance state would come back to the United States and try to implement something similar?
I heard the call. I heard the hotline call. And it's if you fight COVID mandates, meaning if you left your house, there was a spy hotline. And this is communism. These are the communist commissars, spies in every house, spies in every corner. If you see something, say something. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's how it started.
If you see somebody not wearing a mask outside in the playground by themselves, make sure that you report them.
It's the same thing China did, where they turned people on each other. There's stories of